Hello, my name is Michael Joyce. I'm somebody who is registered as partially sighted, and that really is why I'm here today. I'm a volunteer with the Royal National Institute for Blind People for Northern Ireland, and I'm also a member of an organisation which is called the Campaigners Active Network, known as CAN for short. And it's CAN's job to lobby and campaign for people who are blind or partially sighted to obtain improvements and to solve problems which they face in their daily lives. The Northern Ireland Health and Social Care Board has been carrying out work in a project called the 10,000 Voices Project over some years now. This has been facilitated by Christine Armstrong and Vi Gray in the Western Trust. And the object has been to obtain experiences and stories from persons using health services with a view to ascertaining problems that may have arisen. There's been a good deal of survey work carried out, and that work has also been participated in by the RNIB and by CAN. And the result was that it seemed a good idea to introduce a card which would set out a number of suggestions, 6 in all, which would assist staff in their dealings with blind and partially sighted people who come to them for attention. Point number 1 is introduce yourself, explaining who you are and your role. It is a point of contact with the clinician, be it nurse, doctor, consultant or anybody else, that is important, and the person needs to know who it is that they're talking to and why it is that they're being spoken to. It is of importance, but also a comfort to the person if they know exactly who they're dealing with and what's about to happen with them. Ask the person if he or she would like assistance and guide the individual if required. Some people who are partially sighted will not need much assistance because they can see their way sufficiently, but on the other hand others will require assistance, and the clinician does need to find out to what extent the person may require that help. It may be necessary to give physical guidance to the patient, either by taking an arm or an elbow, or by the patient taking you by the elbow. And people have different preferences. The RNIB has helpful rules and instructions on how best to guide people. It's best to ask the person how he or she would like to be guided. And then it's necessary to make sure that the person negotiates the way, move to the left a bit, move to the right a bit to avoid a chair or a trolley. And one of the problems that I often face when I'm going from A to B is that I often encounter those yellow signs which are designed to warn you not to slip on the wet floor. I've never slipped on a wet floor, but I've fallen over numerous of those signs which have been carefully and fastidiously put out to make sure that I didn't slip on the wet floor all the same. So these are some of the obstructions that one faces. And it's also necessary to be warned that you're approaching a left turn or a right turn. And then when you do arrive at the treatment room or wherever the patient is being taken, it's necessary to direct them to the point where you want them to be. Point number 3 is do not walk away from the patient without saying so. Where the patient doesn't see you or doesn't see you clearly, they may be oblivious of the fact that you've actually had to go away, and it is embarrassing and sometimes a little upsetting to a patient to find that the person that they've just been dealing with has disappeared, and the person then finds himself or herself, as it were, talking to himself. So it's asked that you don't walk away without saying so. Point number 4, address the person directly by name at all times. The person may be accompanied by a friend or a relative, and sometimes it's the friend or the relative who tends to open their mouth and do the talking. And it can be very easy then to fall into the trap of dealing directly with the friend or relative who's come along and not talk to the person who's actually come along to receive the treatment or is in review. This is something which I personally call the "does he take sugar" syndrome. Now, of course, there may be instances where the person who is blind or partially sighted may have other communication difficulties as well, or indeed they may simply be very shy or reticent, and obviously one has to cope with that as best one can. Point 5 is tell the person when he or she needs to move to another area within the department or the building. Again, imagine the person is sitting in the waiting area. In some hospitals, the person is notified that they are ready to be seen by their number coming up on screen. That is the difficulty, that the person may not be able to see the screen or see the number. And furthermore, although they may have been issued with a ticket that says they're to be seen in room 42, for example, they may not be able to see where room 42 is. They might not even see the door. They may see the door, but not the number. And therefore it is important that in cases of persons with blindness or partial sightedness, that they're actually told that it's time for them to be seen, and please follow me or take my arm or whatever it is in order to get them to the correct location. Point 6 is keep the person up to date regularly on progress. It is important to the comfort of not just blind and partially sighted people, but I suspect of all persons coming in for treatment, if they are made aware of at least potential delays, so that they can make arrangements. And particularly in outpatient settings, it's important to remember that whereas many patients will have arrived by car and driven themselves and come into the department to be seen, most blind and partially sighted people will not be coming by car and are not able to go out to their car afterwards, jump in and simply drive themselves home. Police wouldn't like it. So they will very often be dependent on a lift, which might be a bus to pick them up. They may be coming by taxi, but they need to let the taxi know when to come. Very many of the people attending will be dependent on a friend or a relative who will drop them off and pick them up afterwards, and need to know when to come and collect the person who's being seen. So it's of considerable practical importance and reduces the anxiety the patients may feel if they are told how things are going. Well, that concludes the 6 suggestions which we put forward in the card. And if anybody wants more information, then they are more than welcome to seek that further assistance. The RNIB would be happy to give it. Our telephone number is 0303 123 9999. You can always consult our website, which is just rnib.org.uk. Thank you very much indeed.